Welcome to Climate Quickies, bite-sized nuggets of climate goodness from our TEDxLondon experts in under 5 minutes.
So we love getting some of the TED family along, don't we, for these podcasts?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm a big fan of is the Audacious Project. So basically, Audacious Project's been going for a few years now, and it's a way of mobilizing big philanthropic dollars to enable really audacious ideas that can change the world for the better.
Oh, it's the cash.
And so today we have another audacious part of that audacious community, Nicole Rycroft. In April, she got $60 million in funding for her NGO called Canopy.
60 million?
Yeah.
That's so much money.
Aren't you intrigued to see how she's going to use it?
I'm intrigued to know how she got it. What the heck?
It basically helps find a way to stop relying on cutting down ancient and endangered forests for packaging or clothing or paper and use other like low carbon solutions instead of doing that horrible stuff.
Oh my gosh, I've got so many questions. First of all, how do trees make clothing?
So Canopy is a solutions-driven NGO. We work to protect the world's forests, and with that, the world's climate, biodiversity, and help advance frontline community rights. Companies that use a lot of paper-based packaging, a lot of wood-based textiles like rayon and viscose.
That's what I was going to ask. What are you said forest-based
textiles.
So what do we mean by this?
I know, it isn't an intuitive connection, right? That's something that can give you a splinter, like wood, or a tree that stands tall in a forest can actually end up as a soft, silky fabric that's next to your skin. So the inside of my suit jacket lining here in New York for Climate Week, or potentially even your dress, could have rayon or viscose or modal.
Viscose. I know viscose.
You see?
Not personally, but yeah.
Right.
I know of the material.
Up close and personal, because
Yeah.
it's in a lot of the clothing that we wear. It's the third largest textile type that we make clothing
and
with.
these all comes from forests.
300 million trees are cut down every year to make textiles, viscose and rayon textiles, and it's going to double within the next decade.
But also things like paper and
packaging as well.
Yeah, all the cardboard boxes that, things get shipped around the world in. Like when you order online, you get 7 times more packaging than if you're in a bricks and mortar purchase.
Wow.
All of that packaging, all of the, pizza boxes, the takeaway containers, the stationery, all those kinds of things. There are more than 5 billion trees that are cut down every year to make paper packaging products more broadly. That's a lot. That's a lot of trees. When we think of climate change, oftentimes what we think about are, use of fossil fuels, bad. We need to stop that, move over to renewables as fast as possible. But keeping forests standing is 30% of the climate solution. There are these other really carbon intensive
and why is that
chains.
For someone who again just thinking that seems like, okay, yes, it's nice to keep forests standing. It seems like it's a nice thing to do. We like it, but why is it a climate solution?
Because there's an incredible amount of carbon that actually sits both in the trees, the above surface kind of things that are in a forest, as well as the soils and the peatlands that forests grow in. And so when we go in and we mow down a forest to send it off to a mill to then make pizza boxes or T-shirts, what we do is we release this massive amount of carbon into the atmosphere, as well as lose the sequestration kind of superpower that forests provide us with over time. Like they're literally, our shields. They're not only the lungs of the planet in that they suck in carbon dioxide and they put out oxygen, but they're also our shields against climate change because they actually pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And so when we log them, then we're creating a massive release of carbon and we're diminishing our ability to actually pull what's in the atmosphere out.
And you said, how many trees did you say it was that we cut down a year for textiles?
For textiles, it's 300 million trees a year. About half of what's cut down to make be it rayon textiles or paper-based packaging, half of that comes from really high carbon, high biodiversity value forests. So those are the ones that we really want to prioritize to
We shouldn't be doing that.
keep standing, conserve them in a way that's just for local communities, as well as, there are going to be some areas within that have already been degraded, and we need to actually restore them back so that for biodiversity, for climate stability. Of the kind of commodities that, forests are cut down for, most of it goes into paper and packaging, but textiles are a really aggressive growing part of the value chain. And so supply chains, they don't sound very sexy. Like they're a little kind of out of sight, out of mind. We go into a clothing store. We don't necessarily, when we look at the price tag, we don't necessarily think, oh my goodness, this has come from, orangutan habitat or traditional communities' lands, indigenous communities' traditional lands. But that's the hidden cost, be it with, like the box that it arrives in or the actual garment or piece itself. And so that's our work. I, like many people, thought that, sure, paper comes from trees, but it's coming from plantations. But the fact is that, between a third to half, depending on which part of the world you're in, is actually coming from these really biologically important forest ecosystems rather than plantations. And so that's the thing that we need to actually stop so that we can have forests do what we need them to do for everything else, which is, provide the foundations for life on Earth.
That is wild. Consider, like, when you actually consider, look at me, but when you consider that the amount of packaging that we use that we don't actually need to use.
Single use often, right? Yeah. Like comes in, goes straight into the recycling bin at best, or potentially into the garbage. Yeah. The fact that we're still mowing down 400-year-old trees to make kind of packaging, shipping boxes, pizza boxes, and T-shirts, that's partly why I started Canopy, because it was like, we are smarter than this. So we at Canopy, we ground our work in what kind of the scientists are saying is ecologically needed.
Right.
And then we work our way back and work out how do we actually get there. And more than half of our society's environmental footprint is wrapped up in supply chains.
Right.
And a company, like 80% of their footprint is attributable to the raw materials that they make their widgets, their wadgets, their clothing, their product from.
Right.
And so that's why we really focus there. And the scientific community are really clear. We need to be, like, basically there's a nature needs half movement within the scientific community, which is basically saying we need to protect and or conserve 50% of the world's land and oceans between basically 2030 to 2050. And the priority needs to be on keeping those kind of intact old growth forests standing, and the marine scapes that are in good stead protected. And then once we've done that, restoring the landscapes that are really important to restore back. So to do that, we have to take the pressure off them to be providing the fiber for, all the things for everything else.
We don't even really need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're aiming for, and that's what we've been supported by the Audacious project this year to achieve by 2030. Actually, by 2033, we're going to have displaced all ancient and endangered forest fiber from clothing and paper and packaging and pulp, and have a full 1/3 of forest fiber taken out of this supply chain. Like, we see next gen as the off-ramp from our reliance on forest.
Is there something people, like just normal people like us in the world, can look out for to know that it's part of this movement?
Yeah, for sure. So you should be looking for brands that are taking leadership on it. So checking out their website, looking at their socials, making sure that, and if they're not communicating about being on the front edge of this, then, you can always ask them, are they? And they're just being modest about it. If you're a fashion lover, make sure you look at your labels. If you're going into into a store to buy something new, then kind of these things tend to really now be kind of on the label or on the hang tag that says that this is made from cellulose or it's made from recycled kind of textile. So those are the things to really keep an eye out for.
Great. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great.
Thank you so much. Oh, and remember, stay curious. Thanks for listening to this quickie.
This episode was created by our superstar podcast team at TEDxLondon. Until next time,
stay curious.